I'm joined today by Nicole Davis, Jack Spallone, Simone de la Riviere, again, what are you doing here? And Vaughn McKenzie. And we're going to dive straight into quick introductions, and then we are going to dive into your incredibly rich and incredibly interesting experience with music and crypto, music and NFTs, because I am incredibly curious about it all. I'll start with a quick intro. I'm Simona. I've kind of been in the space for about 3-4 years. I was there for a lot of the initial kind of projects around NFTs, both on the kind of digital art space and also the music space. And funnily enough, Simone, I think you were my buddy when I first joined Consensus, where we had a coffee together and you told me all about Ujo. And I was like, this is amazing, wonderful. So with that segue, I will let you do a quick intro. Do you need to? Yes. Let's put it in context.
Thanks, Simona. I'm a creator. I like to write, make music, code, and make stuff that empowers creators. I spent a lot of time in the music industry, trying to make the blockchain do interesting stuff there. And now I work in fiction, trying to empower storytellers. So yeah, that's a quick short intro. I'll hand it off to Nicole.
Hey, thanks, Simon. Yeah, so I ran Open Music Initiative for a number of years. So got to hang out with some of these guys and have all sorts of conversations about these topics for years. And now I'm on my own and doing similar work, though, bringing together developers, artists, and, in the crypto space, figuring out how we can continue to, make these connections and make it a better space for artists. And Jack.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. My name is Jack Spallone. I also was formerly on the Ujo music team for about 3 years, starting in 2017. Prior to that, I was kind of earnestly looking at the intersections of crypto and music, coming from a background in artist management, as well as show bookings, etc. Since leaving Consensus and Ujo, I've been collaborating with individual artists. I helped conceive the idea around tape, the most expensive cassette ever sold, on a bonding curve, no less, a creation of Simon's. That was in collaboration with Zora last May, and now I'm working with some artists, helping out with social tokens, among other things. Vaughn.
Cheers, Jack. I guess started a company called Jack around November 2015. Again, we were early in the space. We were kind of alongside the Ujos and a bunch of companies at the time. We went more of the kind of traditional major route. We spent a lot of time with the majors, and ended up running a pilot and included like Warner and Sony. So we were trying to bring their assets on chain. Obviously, did participate a lot in the Open Music Initiative as well. And sadly, that didn't work. Came to an end. And since then, I've just been I guess an avid participant, just watching and learning, and it's just incredible seeing what's happening today.
Indeed, and I think just kind of using that as a diving point for our conversation, how different are those conversations between now and 2015, 2016, 2017? What were the reactions at the time? Like Vaughn with Jack in 2015, if you were chatting to the big labels, what was the dialogue? What was the feedback? What were the questions?
So we first went in to speak to one of the majors. I guess we just won't use names, but one of the majors, and spoke to them about an idea we had, which was a very simple application. We were effectively trying to tokenize the marketing component of music. So fans get music, send it to someone else. We were using tokens to basically pay them, no matter where they were in the chain. And it was kind of modeled after an application called Mflow, which is super old, and it didn't really work. But when we spoke to them, they said, hey, you realize you've come up with a really incredible way to pay fans no matter where they are in the chain, and we don't even have that for artists. And that was actually the first time we even knew that was a problem. So they were really interested, but I guess it was quite surface level, and I think we really struggled to convert those things into commercial applications. But I guess what I'd say is interest correlated with price actions. So prices went up, everyone would return your call. Prices went down, nobody would return your call. And that's, I think everyone probably agrees, I guess, that definitely is how things went.
Some things never change, hey? Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, I was given the interesting challenge of like convening the conversations. And I think that we saw sort of these like ebbs and flows of either like acrimony or harmony between the various parties. And I think that a lot of the concepts, I mean, it's crazy, like, you know, especially like not being as involved now, a lot of what we had been promoting is now possible. And this like focus on protocols, it's like, yes, here we are. But so those conversations wouldn't have been possible without blockchain tech existing, and whether or not it was like blockchain or just a little bit more interoperability, like regardless, that was really sort of the main push. And what we saw was that as blockchain became more mainstream, just the sort of like general acceptance of interoperability also, you know, got there. Having said that, like you know, I think that the challenge in bringing these two pieces together were a couple. Like one is that there were these big institutions that had something that was good enough, even though it wasn't great. It, you know, the margin of improvement, you know, for like all of the work they would have to do in the, you know, in the beginning just wasn't enough, even though eventually it would pay off. And then for smaller startups, you know, as these guys know, everybody was trying to get their market edge. And so because of that, there was really just a focus on survival for those smaller companies versus being able to sink the resources and, you know, team members that didn't exist into this cooperation. And so, you know, I think that like focusing on NFTs specifically, I think that what's interesting is, and Vaughn, I think this is kind of what you were talking about, like there was this focus on like metadata and payments, and then there was the focus on like NFTs, and there weren't a lot of connections. And I feel like those two pieces of work are now just starting to connect, where there was like sort of the really interesting experimental stuff happening. And I think, you know, Ujo was one of those. And then there was the like, oh, this is a database. We know what to do with databases. Let's, you know, put some metadata in it and see what we can do. I'm excited now that people are finally at the stage where we don't have to argue about it and we can start seeing like, okay, let's connect those two pieces and then what else can happen.
Do we think then that it's kind of, we're moving towards this stage where that whole very, very important decision of whether you focus on protocol or product is not necessarily as be all and end all as it used to be? Because I assume it was a very interesting challenge at the time to kind of go, okay, which route do we go? And now you have the mix of both, where it enables this access from different angles by individual artists, where they can just DIY, take and go, or build and go. So I'm interested kind of if that, do we think that plays a role?
You know, from the experience of having to build some of the stuff early on, it's like it's definitely the case that, you know, I would probably say at least 70 to 80% of the stuff that was built has already been thrown out. It's like, I don't know who's going to still use some of that old code, but so I do believe like a lot more people can focus on building product right now. You know, you don't have to, you know, invent a new wallet system, or you don't have to, you know, worry about like where are people going to get crypto from, you know, or all this kind of stuff. So I think that that's at least a lot easier and better now. It's like people can focus on product. But that being said, there's probably still a lot of interesting protocol stuff, like Nicole mentioned, about like metadata and stuff like that. I think is still somewhat lagging behind. Just in terms of, again, like making increasing interoperability in existing music industry institutions. Yeah.
Jack, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually think this is still one of the biggest kind of thorny areas for us specifically in the music area of crypto. music is inherently complex due to how copyright looks at music and what copyright law necessitates how the music is paid out. It's different really from all types of media and copyright in that regard, and that it needs to go through certain collecting societies that are not necessarily going to be on chain anytime soon. So I do see that there is a use case where the product with existing protocol today could potentially start to inform some additional protocol development beyond what I think the traditional protocol versus product kind of discourse is within Web3 today, where protocol is largely agnostic as to what it necessarily operates for. There's a lot of actual, there's a strong case for music having its own specific protocols or standards, if you will, standards in the form of protocols. That really, I think everyone on this panel is probably more excited about than some of the more applicational use cases. I don't want to speak for everyone here, but I know some of the histories of everyone here. And Open Music Initiative is, and Nicole didn't say this, but it got over 200 companies in the same room together to
300.
Over 300 companies in the music business alone, or peripherally at least involved with music. Major labels, collecting societies, publishers, DSPs like Spotify and Apple Music and Pandora, Red Bull Media, for Christ's sake, was there. And you get a couple people like labels and publishers will agree on something. PROs are out; they're upset. You get a DSP and a label to agree on something, and then the publisher is going to throw a fit. And I don't know what the answer is here for incentivizing all these people to get on the same page, but I will say that Web3, permissionless systems, immutable systems, or even not, they do provide a 0-to-1 difference of technology set for the music business than what is currently being used today. And maybe we're talking more about like DIDs and NFTs in that case, but those are the protocol developments that I think people have really yet to scratch the surface, and I think will actually be informed from product use cases, not the other way around.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also with, I don't know, we'll see what happens over the next year or so, but like, I think that with the proliferation of capital flowing into the crypto space again, like, I think that it's been made clear that there's something to be said for example, like a collecting society that agrees to have on-chain settlement, for example. And there's, there are companies out there that are starting to experiment in that space. And so I think that like we're getting closer. And I also think that the case has been made that like, I think that like a lot of what's happening now is going to also just push copyright. I mean, it's probably going to be another 20 or so years, but the same way that copyright had to be written and rewritten for streaming, I think that we're going to see that there's going to be ways of releasing that we haven't really figured out yet or defined, that we're going to say, like this isn't a stream, this isn't a CD purchase, this isn't a song purchase, this is something else. And there's going to have to be a different, rate set, et cetera. And the last thing I'll say on that is like, I hope that we see, artists of color, queer artists, like marginalized artists, like at the table, shaping those protocols and shaping the way that these techs get developed, because it is, we don't have these many chances, like so often, like the chance to kind of get streaming right and to get like the streaming rates right, like that's come and gone. Those reviews don't come around that often. And so I hope that like, as we do this, that we're getting the right people at the table, because this is a pretty major opportunity.
How do we do that? How do we ensure that the right people are at the table and we don't fall into those usual kind of habits of just like, well, this is just the way things are now, so I guess we'll just go in this direction? Because I think you pointed out in our conversation the other day, Nicole, that proximity between the artists and the developers is so important to genuinely move things forward and genuinely produce these radical shifts. How do we ensure that stays there, or how do we ensure that proximity and that accessibility is maintained versus, again, just falling into a pattern and then just going with it because new status quo. And this is to everyone. Any thoughts?
This is like one of my big fears. I like to open with, peer-to-peer technology broke the music business. Maybe it'll be its saving grace. Maybe, right? If we think about it that way, because we've had the platform walled garden approach kind of rectify music sales. They haven't really returned significant amounts of money to rights holders, creatives, specifically the creatives. And I fear that obviously the big vulnerability is we are just exploited for the very things that we set out to prevent. And with traction of specific use cases today, it may very well be that we start having a lot more extractive style relationships start to emerge, akin to legacy models within the music business and how contracts are structured. But there's hope, right? I mean, there's new ways that people can configure themselves to service creatives that hopefully gets recognized and finds the light of day that creators can kind of gain from there just being public knowledge that you don't have to go into extractive agreements. And, I think it's yet to be seen. The jury's still out on that. But I think the big fear for me is that it almost feels as if as an industry, we were caught off guard by this NFT thing. Or NFT mania rather, and the consumer kind of creative level of acceptance around crypto that we're now kind of this reburgeoning happening. I feel as though, and this is kind of personal, but I feel like we could have maybe done a better job positioning tools specifically for music licensing and copyright for this moment. It wasn't a matter of losing confidence. There was a whole lot of things that went into really the last 4 years of building, but there's still a lot of great ideas out there that I really would still like to kind of see more experimentation and ideation around. And you're seeing it, but it's a lot more like it was in 2017, where people are kind of coming in through the side. They don't necessarily know the context of what's fully possible with this technology, but what history is there, what people have done, what conversations have been had. And there's a lot of ambitious ideas that I'm seeing that seem kind of deaf to that. And I don't know, I'm still trying to see where those voids are closed.
Vaughn, any thoughts?
I think it's an interesting one for me. I think I kind of believe in kind of structural advantages. I think crypto has some structural advantages that I think will bear out. I think it's really hard to, to influence it from any single positions. I don't feel like I have much ability to influence how this ends up being structured independently. But I think that there are a couple of things that kind of give me some hope. So first is the kind of lack of constraints, or the fact that access to capital in crypto seems to be a lot more free flowing. And so you get loads of opportunities up and down the stack, regardless of where you sit. I think that's really exciting. Also, you get a much clearer attribution of value to things that are valuable, not things that are constrained to the few people who have access to kind of resources. And so a great example, I saw that thing the other day about that artist who created, I think he created a black avatar kid who is really interested in space and gets signed. I think people can signal and coordinate in digital spaces far easier than they could in the spaces that are kind of controlled and governed by very large companies or people who have control over those resources. And those are things, I think those two things are the most those are the two shifts that I think will have such a big impact in this space. And I don't think it's going to change overnight, but I think there's just a better opportunity for people from any background to kind of have a voice and kind of build things of value and have an opportunity to influence governance in these new systems that we're building. And I think that's just a really, really good thing. But I don't think it's we're there and everything's going to change overnight. yeah, progress.
An evolution, not a revolution. It takes a minute. Things moving and getting there, and maybe getting there in a way that's actually sustainable versus a flash in the pan and then it goes away, right? Speaking of that, what do we feel the future holds? So with your 5, 6, 7 years, which in crypto years is a lifetime, what do we feel lies ahead? Prediction or anything that you're kind of, hey, this will really potentially happen, or this will really change in a way that is meaningful?
I mean, I'm going to be optimistic and actually shout out something that Simon had written and spoken about, which is sort of this shift in ownership and like changing ideas of ownership. And I think that it kind of gets at what I was talking about before of like, is it a stream? Are you buying a song? Like, what is it that you're doing? And, shifting like kind of the ownership economy in general, and even kind of gets to your earlier question of like, how are these systems going to change? I think that looking around and seeing like the union of musicians and allied workers, or like the success of Ampled, and that's building, and Resonate out there building as well. Like, I think that there's some really interesting community-owned examples, or examples that are being built in and with community. And so as we start also shifting our ideas, and I think that like, at least I see that there's a shift in how people think about capital in communities. And so if we're willing to experiment in that space, can we also do that in how we think about music and how we support artists? So I think that marrying crypto to that could really open up exciting possibilities. And I'm optimistic about that.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. In some sense, it feels like the past like 10, 15 years of like web tech, where it's just like everything was like, it's the sharing economy, and like we're all just gonna hold hands and stuff. But all the money funneled out of local economies into a few large scale tech companies, and the value of ownership really here has also a promise of putting money back into local economies, right? So, what we want is not for people to make money from streaming and then the money going to out of the local economy. It's like, if you get people to buy stuff again from each other, it's like money comes in from elsewhere, stays in local economy, and the musicians and artists and creatives like buy things from each other again, because they have a sense of ownership again about whatever is happening in the space. Like that is a dream that would be great to see. It's like where the money circulates again in a specific area and a specific community. And it doesn't have to be like, I use local as in like, it can be physically local, but also community local, geographic, not necessarily geographically local. So I think that's still something that I feel would be great to see in practice. And then another aspect of it, I think, just seeing what the current state looks like already is so great to see, because it's like this for so long we've tried to make this stuff work, at least to some extent, and it's just great to see it. And I just hope it more of it proliferates into different pockets of the world, away from where it is now. And like, I have found amazing artists and musicians and so forth as a result of crypto, bringing them out of wherever they are in their local geographical spaces. And that's a really cool promise, I believe. Yeah.
Awesome. So almost like a regenerative economy that basically just constantly, like a butterfly effect, that constantly kind of moves the value and maintains it. Ron, Jack?
Yeah, sure. I'll go next. I think about this in two ways. I think like in kind of a really generic, abstract way, which is the way I think, which is kind of annoying to most people. But I think about it in terms of we have this like physical space which we all kind of are sovereign in our own rights in some way because we get to like live and breathe and so on, and we can control ourselves. And then we have this like digital space which was so difficult navigating, coordinating. So like we kind of gave all of our rights to these massive companies, and in order to live in that digital space, like they extract a lot of value from us. So they like recreate us in like virtual space, and Google owns everything and allows us to coordinate by like email and so on. And like with crypto, it's like we have this like right to be in that digital space and to coordinate with something that's like sovereign, and that's like incredible, right? So, and when I think the ramifications of that in music is, there's a whole spectrum of economic relationships, and some of them not even economic, between like artists and fans and patrons and funders that we've never been able to explore in a digital realm. And that's what's up for grabs. Like that's super exciting. And I think that we're going to be building that, like fleshing that out over time. And that's super, super exciting. And I think that's one time in terms of like what that could look like. And again, like the platforms that are being built out, I think when you look at some of the platforms that are live today, they're doing like maybe like 1 or 2% of like where that could go. It's really interesting looking in the social token and community token space for like ideas around how that could work. And it did make me think about like something that the consensus team loosely kind of put together, Tokit, which was like a bit silly. And I think the other way of thinking about it is like what it means for the traditional music industry. And I think you've got on the one side, I always feel about this, like there was a train station, there was a train, and the train was leaving. And as it started leaving, it was going to go faster and faster and faster. And that's crypto. And you, Joe, were on the train. Open Music and Jack were like on the station, like trying to help the music industry pack its bags and get them on the train. And I just think that like it's not going to work. Like we're not going to get this stuff on the train. So I think we kind of need to jump on the train. But I don't think it's going anywhere awful. I think it's going somewhere great. But I don't think the music industry is going to get on there. So I think we'll end up with what we have, where today kind of where copyright exists on the outside, but we find much better ways to coordinate on inside this kind of digital space. So yeah, super exciting. Just don't know if the music industry is going to like jump on the train with us.
Yeah, how do I follow
that analogy? Really
amazing. Loved it.
I think on the thread of what everyone's touching on here, you know, the aspects of like community allocation and community are the big thing that stand out for me. I mean, I mentioned I'm helping some artists with social tokens. I still firmly believe that they're going to be this next kind of fertile kind of creative ground for exploring how we build community around artists and provide some decent services that I think will set a floor to just quality of living for artists. I've said this before, but I thought it was in hindsight, it seems like it was a fool's errand to kind of go after all the little kind of micro areas where crypto intersects with the inequities of the music business today and try and solve for those. Because it overlooks this like very, very massive new possibility of creating permissionless community with capital. And to kind of what Vaughn's point was about putting value around things that we were never able to put, there's a lot of existing value in the relationships between artists and their fans. And now that we can capture that and put that in some sort of unit of value that can be transferred and priced, is going to create a lot of really, really interesting things that I think will exist kind of adjacent to the music business, the recorded music business as we know it, and the live performance business as we know it. But it will start creating those, collectives or cooperatives that start to bring in more artists and provide just, general livings for them and allow them to continue to do what they're doing.
Very cool. Love it. I think we are almost out of time, but I think we have a question from the audience, and I think it's Gabe again. Should music always be on sale? Should digital music always be on sale?
Simon, this is yours.
No, I believe not. No, I think some stuff should have some. It's up to the individual to choose that. I believe, some stuff shouldn't have a price, and sometimes it's bad for things to have a price, but sometimes it also helps a lot. It's a pretty vague answer. Sorry.
But that's the beauty of it all, right? It is absolutely the choice of the creator. And this is, I think, what crypto does for music, for us all. It gives us a choice.
Exactly.
Agency.
Yep.
Can I counter? I actually think that price is important because I think it gives everybody agency, and I think that it's information, and I think it's an important thing to have in all respects, even if people don't act on it. I think it's just important information.
And it's, you know, the artist being able to price that is pretty new. I mean, that's you know, another piece that like has just sort of been taken out of the hands of artists. And so the potential for an artist to say, I think that this one song is worth this much money, it just hasn't been happening recently. So yeah.
So empowering artists, basically.
Yeah, to set the value of the work the same way that others can. I mean, imagine.
Awesome. Well, I'm so sorry we don't have more time, but we've been chatting, and as soon as we can do this thing in real life, we might do an OGNFT take 2. And you're obviously all invited, but for now, thank you so much. Nicole, Jack, Simone, Vaughn, and everybody watching. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simona.
Take care. Thanks.
Thanks, Simona.